I'll just read from it. I'm exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the January 6th Select Committee, and U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee.
Ain't nothing changed, nothing new here to see. This ain't nothing but some political maneuvering.
America.
Welcome to the eulogy, eat it up. It's called political buffoonery.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome to This Week in DUMBmocracy, where we showcase some of the dumbest newsmakers of the week. I was all set to take a moment on the show and bask in the afterglow of the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. The pomp, the pageantry, the bands, the singing, Carrie Underwood, the speech that Donald Trump made, Liberation Day as he coined it. I was ready to talk about that flurry of executive orders, how Marco Rubio was confirmed as Secretary of State, and look forward in optimism for the term to come. But unfortunately, we can't do that today because the outgoing administration and Joe Biden is forcing us to look back again upon what I'm terming as the single biggest act of hypocrisy that I've seen in my lifetime. Biden, in the waning moments of his presidency, issued preemptive pardons for many characters, including Mark Milley, including Liz Cheney, other members of the J6 committee, Anthony Fauci, and members of his own family. We're going to talk about this news and frame it out for you. We're going to show you the hypocrisy that I'm talking about, not only from Biden, but from the mainstream leftist media, comparing what they were saying back in 2020 to the excuses and equivocations that we're seeing now. And then we're going to talk about what solace many of us can take from these preemptive pardons, what they actually mean for those who accepted them. And then a quick discussion that I'd like you to join me in concerning Biden's legacy and what these preemptive pardons do to that. But before we get to all of that, I'm going to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. And if you like what you're seeing here in this or any other video on the channel, I'm going to ask you guys to, well, you know already what I'm going to ask you guys to do. You're going to smash the thumbs up button, please, and thank you. Like, comment, share the show with your friends, all that really, really good stuff, because all that's going to help this channel grow via the YouTube algorithm. Or maybe you're watching on Rumble right now, or you're watching on X. Wherever you're watching, do whatever you have to do to hit those buttons to support the show. I really appreciate all the efforts that everyone's doing wherever you're watching. And if you're a newbie watching on any of those platforms right now, I hope this video earns your subscription. And I'm glad that you're here to talk about this hypocrisy of preemptive pardons. We're going to get into some of the minutiae of it. But before we do, let's look at MSDNC, who is breaking this news in the early morning hours of Inauguration Day.
Caddy, we have breaking news right now. Joe Biden has just, according to Jonathan Mir, has just issued a series of pardons of significant.
Just now, a statement from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, talking about the defensive need to defend public servants, and he's offering pardons. He is pardoning now. I'll just read from it. I'm exercising my authority under the Constitution to pardon General Mark A. Milley, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the members of Congress and staff who served on the January 6th Select Committee, and U.S. Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee. He goes on to say the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. And just backing up a moment, we have known for months now speculation that there would be these preemptive pardons issued by the White House. There were some people wanted them, others did not. But a remarkable, historic moment here in just his final hours of the presidency, issuing pardons for those who very much were targeted by Donald Trump and his allies, for potential for prosecution and retribution.
Joe Biden also pardoned members of his family, including Jim Biden, who has been famously associated in the press with the term Biden Inc., signaling the Biden family business, so to speak, of influence peddling, using Joe Biden's name, the Biden brand, to bring millions of dollars into their family. This is the same family that we talked about with Hunter Biden, who was pardoned as well for any actions from January 2014 going forward. We talked about that in another video. You'll see a link in the description below. January 2014 is the same date used on the other Biden family members' pardon as well, which brings up quite a coincidence. Why is that date so significant to Joe Biden? It goes 10 years back and really associated with Hunter Biden's involvement with Chinese businesses, with the CCP, as well as with that Ukrainian oil business, Burisma. Joe Biden's rationale, as spoken about by Jonathan Weir in this clip, is the same thing he spoke about 10 days prior in this clip, saying that all of these preemptive pardons that may have been coming down the pipe, which did come down the pipe, were all the result of Donald Trump.
Can you just give us a sense of what other pardons and commutations you're considering in your last 10 days?
Well, the answer is no, because of two things. One is that,
well, we're waiting.
it depends on some of the
Spit it out.
language and expectations that Trump broadcast in the last couple days here as to what he's going to do. The idea that he would punish people for not adhering to what he thinks should be policies related to his well-being is outrageous. But there's still consideration of some folks, nothing but no decision.
So once again, Biden blaming everything on Trump as always, and this time saying that Trump's rhetoric led him to this decision to give these preemptive pardons. To me, this is the single most hypocritical thing I've seen in my adult lifetime. Let me show you why. We're flashing back to December of 2020 because the internet is forever. This is an interview by CNN's Jake Tapper with then President-elect Joe Biden and then Vice President-elect Kamala Harris concerning rumors that Donald Trump may be issuing preemptive pardons for his family as well as for Rudy Giuliani. Let's see what the then President-elect had to say about preemptive pardons.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons. Nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
A totally different way. Yeah, right. We see now 4 years later, that's a crock of you-know-what. Joe Biden then was worried about what precedent preemptive pardons would set. He was worried about how the world would look at our version of law and justice, when he should have been worried about his own situational ethics. See, when Joe Biden had the upper hand here, he was all high and mighty, talking about high-minded principles.
Not so high and mighty anymore.
Based upon the moment, Joe Biden is pliable and bendable when it comes to his own ethics. That's the hypocrisy I'm talking about that I discuss further in my book, Schnooks, Crooks, Liars, and Scoundrels, a field guide to identifying political buffoons, available right now on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and other online bookstores.
This guy is a grifter.
Ethics is what you do in the shadows, in my opinion. It's what you do when no one's looking. Joe Biden was talking in public in 2020 about the danger of preemptive pardons, especially for family members. And now, 4 years later, he's done the exact thing that he was worried about. But he can justify it all, as you saw in the previous clip, because Donald Trump was going to do something. Well, in Trump's position in 2020, he was possibly contemplating that Joe Biden would do something. And in fact, Joe Biden did do something. He engaged in the most rabid lawfare that we've seen in political terms. We've never seen political rivals go at each other in courts, criminally, civilly, election law, the way that the Biden administration went after Donald Trump, all of which he overcame to become president once again. The hypocrisy, however, doesn't stop with just Joe Biden. Of course, it trickles down through the leftist mainstream media, as you'll see in this compilation that I found online as well. Again, thank goodness the internet is forever.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
Is there an innocent explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
The answer to that is going to be no. If you haven't done anything wrong, you sit there and go, what do you need a preemptive pardon for?
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
I imagine if he decides to issue these preemptive pardons, it will be cast in a way that he is protecting his family and protecting their reputations from, villainous exterior forces that are against him.
First off, we should just take a deep breath and acknowledge the audacity of a president who's so clearly concerned about his own criminal culpability and that of his family members that pardons are a major obsession with him.
The idea of a kind of prospective pardon, this sort of permanent federal get-out-of-jail-free card, that seems to be what we're talking about in the case of this, right, with Giuliani and his 3 eldest children who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of a crime. Maybe they've committed a lot. And they don't want to face action. I don't know. It's weird. I wouldn't ask for a pardon. I don't think I deserve one because I don't think I've done anything criminal. But where does that come from? That concept you can just kind of wave your magic pardon wand.
We have Tish James. We have Xavier Becerra. Mimi Rocha is literally my DA in my town. There will be opportunities to prosecute these people regardless if they abuse the pardon power as they are thinking.
Hopefully, Ellie, there will be a skyfall on this entire crime family, and there will be another day for them to die.
The president does indeed pardon, let's say, Rudy Giuliani or any members of his family. Would you see that, and I asked Preet Bharara this question, as essentially an admission of guilt?
I certainly would view it that way. I think millions of Americans would view it that way. If there was no belief in criminality, why would he think a pardon was necessary?
Hypocrisy, thy name is you.
Whether wittingly or unwittingly, the mainstream media became the Biden administration's accomplice when it comes to these preemptive pardons. They took Joe Biden's word hook, line, and sinker, saying that Democrats have the moral high ground, apparently. That Democrats would never stoop to what Donald Trump was contemplating, except not only did Joe Biden contemplate it, he went through with it. He set that precedent. He established that possible negative viewpoint of law and justice that the world will now look upon. How America is just another petty banana republic out there where leaders are out for themselves instead of the good of the nation. Donald Trump didn't do that. Joe Biden did it. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. Beyond the blatant hypocrisy that we've just talked about, there's another deeper layer of spin that Joe Biden is trying to do here, which is legally inaccurate. And I'm going to show you why. But before we do, let's go back to the announcement that Jonathan Muir was quoting from, where Joe Biden was talking about the effect of these preemptive pardons.
The issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense.
No admission of guilt, no offense committed. That's what Joe Biden is trying to say. Clearly, Joe Biden is not a constitutional scholar. I mean, duh, right? We've seen him lately. But I do want to show you, in Supreme Court precedent, the meaning of a presidential pardon. In Burdick versus United States, a case heard by the Supreme Court back in 1915, over 100 years ago, the court heard a case concerning the effect of a pardon issued by the president to someone who had not been convicted of a crime nor admitted to the commission of a crime, and the necessity of accepting a pardon in order to make it effective. The Supreme Court held in this case that there are substantial differences between legislative immunity, or amnesty, and a pardon. A pardon carries with it an imputation of guilt. An acceptance of the pardon is to confess to that guilt.
English, please.
So when Joe Biden says these preemptive pardons to all of these public officials or to members of his family do not include admissions of guilt in them or any sort of confession thereof, that's a bunch of BS. This case actually says if you accept a pardon, you're confessing to guilt of something, whether convicted of or not. And before you say it, yes, this case is still good law, even though it's over 100 years old. It's been cited in other cases, including, and let me get my notes out here because this is a funny case name, Henry Bonk, B-O-N-K, from 1975, in the 7th Circuit of Illinois, which states that a confession of guilt is implied in the acceptance of a pardon. And with these last acts as president, Joe Biden has forever tarnished his legacy. All of the discussion for years, almost a decade now, about the influence peddling, about Hunter Biden's foreign clients and businesses, all the denials of it being Russian disinformation or being inaccurate fake news or whatever it is, the denials of meeting with Hunter's associates, the denials about being associated or taking any benefit from any of these business dealings with so-called Biden Inc. It's all now covered by this imputation of guilt that Joe Biden has left over his entire family, his son, his siblings. They're all tainted by association with Joe Biden. Joe Biden has moved on from hypocrite to irredeemable buffoon. He's radioactive to his family because he made them radioactive. This cloud of guilt, or at least this cloud of uncertainty that comes along with these pardons in the public eye, it will forever be there. The name Biden will be synonymous with scandal.
Shame. Shame.
Now, when it comes to everyone else and the effect of these pardons, there's other court precedent out there. The intention of preemptive pardons like this was contemplated by our founders. It was contemplated to give immunity for testimony later on concerning bad and criminal acts. So if a conservative or a Trump supporter wants to take any solace from these preemptive pardons beyond the stain of the Biden name that comes along with them, it'll be this. This government now, the Trump administration that has a Republican House, a Republican Senate, they can now issue subpoenas to all of these pardoned people, whether it be Liz Cheney, Dr. Fauci, or any Biden in so-called Biden Inc., Hunter Biden, whomever. And they can no longer take the Fifth Amendment to protect themselves from self-incrimination because they've been pardoned. It's all been dealt with on the federal level. So if there's a federal inquiry into other associates of Biden Inc. that may be out there, other business partners, other allies, other officials who were not included in the blanket pardons that Joe Biden offered to the January 6th committee, these people now have to testify and tell the truth about their roles. They can't hide anymore. Maybe we'll see that in the future with a further investigation into other people associated with those who were pardoned by the DOJ, or by a congressional investigation into what happened with Biden Inc., what happened with J6, and all that's covered by these preemptive pardons. This is not a victory for Joe Biden. This is not a victory for Democrats. They've been exposed. for the hypocrisy of a decade of material here. And frankly, that taint should last a lot longer as we head into this Trump administration. But hey, that's just my opinion on all of this. Let me know what you think. Let's get into the comments together. And as always, like and share this video with your friends, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other shows. Are you frustrated by these preemptive pardons? Of course you are. Do you recognize the hypocrisy of Joe Biden and the mainstream media in how they handle things in 2020 versus 2024? I'm sure you are too. But let's get into this nitty-gritty of it all. What do you want to see come out of this? Let's discuss that and all the other shenanigans and buffoonery happening this week in DUMBmocracy.
All views and opinions expressed here are not necessarily of the mainstream media and may offend some listeners. It's called political buffoonery.